Terrifying Wendigo encounters, discover sinister secrets of the cursed deep woods this summer. The cabin stood alone, encased by a canopy of twisting branches that clawed at the sky like skeletal hands. The air was thick with a silence that hung heavy, brewing a storm of unease. Sarah's heart raced as she clutched her children close. Alex and Lily, spirited souls whose laughter once filled the spaces of their tired lives. Now, all that surrounded them was an oppressive pressure that threatened to swallow their joy. "This is going to be an adventure," she whispered, forcing a smile. But as Alex and Lily ran towards the edge of the woods, a shiver crawled up her spine. She had heard the locals talk about the Wendigo, a figure shrouded in shadows, a creature born from the greed and despair of Pine Hollow's past. It was all just stories, she thought. Until now. Their first evening was marred by the orange glow of the campfire, trying desperately to push back the darkness that encroached around them. The woods were alive. Whispers skittered through the trees, carrying on the wind forgotten tales of ancient hardships, greedy souls, and the Wendigo waiting for a chance to feast. Shadows danced ominously beneath the treetops, and Sarah felt a creeping sense of dread. "Did you hear that?" she asked, glancing at the twinkling eyes of her children as they giggled, oblivious to the darkness. But as the days passed, the laughter faded, replaced by a nervous tension that tightened around her like a vice. Each night, as sleep beckoned them, Sarah found herself straining to hear twigs snapping, a low growl in the distance, shadows moving with an intent that sent her heart careening. Were their eyes stalking her family from beyond the trees? One night, as she wiped down the diner counters in Pine Hollow, she spoke to Sheriff Caldwell, a man whose easy smile felt heavy with hidden knowledge. He listened to her fears about the whispers in the woods and the restless nights, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of something else. "Legends hold a grain of truth, you know," he said, his voice low. Panic swirled in Sarah's chest as she recalled the reassuring stories she had brushed off. "Maybe you shouldn't linger too long in the woods." They know his warning hung in the air, thickening the tension around her. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But nothing prepared her for what lay ahead. Each night grew darker, each sound more sinister, each passing moment blended into a waking nightmare. It became clear that something awaited them just beyond the threshold of the woods, a hidden malice that thrived on fear. Strange occurrences piled up. The kids spoke of a friend, their voices automatic while the hairs on Sarah's neck prickled. A figure behind the trees, a dreadful low growl, a chill that bored deep in her bones. When the sinister shadows began creeping closer, Sarah's instinct screamed that they needed to leave. But leaving felt like stepping straight into the lurking danger, the weight of the Wendigo's hunger clawing at her heart. Dark shapes loomed, the fauna began to whisper her name, and the children's laughter transformed into echoing cries for help. As Sarah struggled to find them, she faced the fearsome truth: what was it willing to take to protect her family? The suffocating dread wrapped tightly around them, whispering unendingly as they moved closer to the edge of an abyss. A confrontation was coming and escape felt more like a trap. Would they be swallowed whole by their own despair? The air that day felt electric, a charged silence that hung between the trees before the storm broke. Sarah stood at the cabin door, eyes darting toward the woods. Alex and Lily's giggles had faded into something harder to recognize, muffled by the weight of unseen eyes. The woods pulsed with a heartbeat of its own, throbbing louder with every breath. "Stay close," she called, the urgency slicing through her throat, but the words barely left her lips before she turned, feeling the chill crawl down her spine. Something was out there, watching, waiting. The sunlight barely broke through the oppressive canopy, the shadows almost alive, gnashing teeth that spoke of despair. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught movement. A fleeting glimpse of pale skin, emaciated limbs, vanishing behind the gnarled roots of an old oak. A flash of horror gripped her heart. What had she dragged her children into? Panic surged inside her like an out-of-control river, sweeping doubt and logic away in a frenzied rush. This wasn't just any adventure, it was a descent into a nightmare. That evening, she gathered the kids by the fire, flames dancing wildly, casting flickering shadows on their innocent faces. "What's your friend's name?" she asked, forcing a casual tone, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Raven," Lily replied, her eyes glazed, voice unnaturally soft. "Raven," Sarah repeated, forcing a laugh, though it felt brittle. What a pretty name. But her stomach churned. The name felt sinister on her tongue, a harbinger of something unseen. She shivered, the shadows laughing at her fears. As night fell, the forest's symphony kicked in, rustling leaves, the distant howl, and then, a voice soft and teasing, calling out to the children. "Alex! Lily!" It echoed, familiar yet twisted, singing their names with a haunting intonation that sent ice through Sarah's veins. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, unsure. Her children nodded, eyes wide. But it wasn't them she was worried about. It was the voice that slithered around the clearing like fog suffocating the light. "Stay here, don't move," she instructed, her maternal instincts battling against pure terror. She raced toward the tree lean, heart thumping like a drum in her chest. Every shadow began to twist, morphing into figures with hollow eyes. She felt the chill deepen, the air tasting metallic and wrong, then she saw it, a shadowy shape, crouched low, half-formed within the trees. Pale and skeletal, it grinned with a jaw that defied biology, an unnatural hunger sparking in its empty gaze. It was no longer a rumor, it was real, and it was here. "Mommy!" she heard, a terrified cry from Alex, snapping her back to reality. "No!" she cried, rushing back to the fire, but it was too late. The flames flickered violently, as if preparing to be snuffed out, and Lily's laughter turned into sobs, echoes of fear that stabbed deep into her nerves. "Run!" Sarah yelled, grabbing the children by the arms. They sprinted, the woods closing in around them, as branches grappled like claws. Suddenly, darkness enveloped them. The air turned thick, heavy with dread. The path she thought she knew now twisted like a serpent, the cabin disappearing behind a haze of fear. Something was closing in, its breath hot against her neck. Was it the Wendigo? Or had Raven come for her children after all? As they stumbled into the heart of the woods, Sarah realized she had to make a choice. Fight or flee. But as a growl reverberated through the dark, echoing her deepest fears, the decision felt like a fading breath. Which path led to safety and which would lead to doom? Just ahead, an ethereal light flickered, too bright and too inviting. But the woods whispered of dangers that lurked in plain sight. With her heart pounding in her chest, and an unseen evil close behind, Sarah took a step toward the light, not knowing what awaited her on the other side. The light pulsed, a beacon in the suffocating dark. With one last glance over her shoulder, Sarah felt a primal urge to keep moving. The growl faded momentarily, replaced by a chilling silence that wrapped around them like ice. She squeezed the children's hands tighter, feeling their small fingers trembling as fear rippled through them like electric shockwaves. "Stick together," she urged, her voice strained. The golden hue from the light drew them in closer, promising safety or perhaps a deeper danger. As they moved forward, the path twisted unnaturally, like a maze constructed by a madman. Tall trees leaned in, their branches like skeletal fingers grasping for the warm glow that illuminated their sinister forms. Suddenly, the light dimmed, flickering unpredictably. Shadows deepened around them, and with each flicker, Sarah felt the malevolence swell, a presence lingering just beyond the edge. A fleeting thought crossed her mind: what if the light was a trap set by whatever hunted them? But there was no time to rethink her options. "Mommy, I'm scared," whispered Alex, his voice breaking. "I know, honey, just keep moving," she replied, forcing a smile despite the dread pooling in her stomach. As they neared the source of light, it transformed into a blur, revealing vague figures, swirling shapes that morphed in unsettling ways. Sarah halted, breath hitching. What were they? Her heart raced as she squinted. One shape stepped forward. The figure was cloaked in brightness, a juxtaposition of light and dark that formed a girl, a child. Brimming with light yet shadowy around the edges, she had hair like spun silver. Eyes glowed with an eerie light, a blend of innocence and something wicked lurking behind. "Hello," she sang, her voice sweet but tainted with something hollow. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, pulling Alex and Lily protectively closer. "Raven," the girl replied, the name like a knife to Sarah's heart, a dreadful familiarity thickening the air. "I've been waiting for you." "No, no," Sarah whispered, fear flooding her veins. This was the friend they had heard about, the phantom of the woods, the dangerous spirit. "Come play with us," Raven beckoned, a grin spreading across her too wide mouth. "We can have so much fun." "Fun?" Sarah spat back, her stomach twisting. "You're not real, you can't be." Her voice broke, fear spilling over. "I'm very real," Raven taunted, taking a step closer, the shadows flickering around her like a veil of tar. "And I'm so hungry." With that, a howl echoed from deep within the trees. It was a sound like a million lost voices, and it vibrated through the ground, making Sarah's bones ache. The growl returned, louder and more menacing, a promise of death lurking just beyond the light. As Raven advanced, the forest roared back to life. A cacophony of whispers enveloped them, voices that twisted and turned, murmuring secrets of despair. Shadows slithered, flickering like memories of the lost. "Run!" Sarah screamed again, grabbing her children's hands even tighter as they spun around, retreating away from the specter of innocence turned sinister. Branches grasped at their clothes, shadows clawed close, and the growls intensified as if the whole forest wanted a taste of their terror. The bright light, once a source of hope, pulsed madly, and Sarah realized it was off balance, vibrating like a living thing. "Mommy!" Lily cried as they stumbled. Panic rose, thick and choking. "Keep going," Sarah urged, adrenaline fueling her legs. But just before they broke the tree line, a shattering scream pierced the air, a child's scream, echoing their very own. Alex nearly tripped, his eyes wide with horror. "Is it?" he whispered, voice trembling. "No. It's not them." Sarah shouted, but doubt gnawed at her, dread spilled into her heart as a shadow with long, bony fingers reached toward them from the dark, a grotesque figure born of nightmares, its lips curling into a smile of madness. Just ahead, the forest opened into a clearing, but safety felt like a distant dream. Would they be able to escape this monstrous gathering? As they rushed towards the light, the ground shuddered beneath their feet, the climax of chaos that awaited them blurring into a false hope. What awaited them on the other side was still unknown, but dread lurked just under the surface of that ethereal glow. Would they find salvation, or was it only the beginning of their descent? The clearing loomed ahead like a mirage, flickering against the shadows that clung to the edges of the forest. The pulsating light poured from an unseen source, sending long tendrils of illumination into the darkness, but the path was uncertain. With each footstep, the ground trembled beneath them, like a warning. "Not much further," Sarah shouted, her breath escaping in ragged gasps. Behind them, the growl intensified, a primal sound echoing the desperation in her heart. It promised pain, relentless pursuit, and an urgency that clawed at her throat. She couldn't let the children falter, they had already lost too much. As they fled, the air thickened, heavy with the scent of damp earth mixed with something acrid. Sarah shot a glance over her shoulder, her stomach dropping. The figure of Raven was gone, but the oppressive darkness swelled as if feeding off their fear. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, shifting and swirling, seeking to consume them whole. "Keep moving, keep moving," Sarah whispered, latching onto hope that flickered fleetingly before her like fireflies. "Will we be all right?" Lily's small voice pierced the chaos around them, her innocence a stark contrast to the encroaching dread. "Yes, we will." Sarah lied, desperation giving her voice a steadiness she didn't feel. Suddenly, they reached the edge of the clearing, the light brighter, almost blinding. It illuminated a stone circle, thick moss coating the ground and ancient trees framing the space like guardians. The flickering dimmed, revealing strange symbols etched on the stones, a forgotten language long lost to time etched within their skin. "Mommy, what is that?" Alex whispered, confusion and fear mingling in his wide eyes. "They don't matter, Alex. We need to get to the other side." With a quick nod, they surged into the circle, but as they stepped within the boundaries of the light, an intense chill swept over them. It felt as if the warmth was being snatched away, leaving only an icy embrace. A sudden silence enveloped them, the foreboding growls fading into an unsettling hush. Was this safety? Or a facade, hiding something worse? And then, out of the stillness, a voice echoed a soft, seductive whisper that crept into Sarah's mind, causing a shiver to race down her spine. "Stay with us, you're home now." The ground shifted beneath Sarah's feet, and she staggered, struggling to comprehend what was happening. Behind her, Lily and Alex gasped as they stumbled further into the clearing. "Mommy! It's so cold!" Lily cried, her tiny voice dotted with terror. "Do not listen to it!" Sarah yelled, pulling them back, but their feet seemed to find a will of their own, drawn toward the stones. The light pulsed again, and Raven's figure appeared at the edge, twisting in the brilliance. "Join us, you belong here." Panic surged as Sarah felt a tugging at her heart, a yearning that sowed confusion. Could it be wrong to want peace? The children's hands felt warm in hers, but that warmth was faltering, slipping. She tore her gaze away and scanned the perimeter of the circle. Beyond it, something moved in the darkness, rolling like smoke. Creatures, distorted forms, crawled ever closer. Long limbs bending at impossible angles, their eyes glowing like hungry flames hungry for them. "Run!" A sudden surge of clarity pierced through the fog. Sarah yanked her children back, but the ground quaked, and the symbols glowed fiercely, casting an eerie light. A sharp scream cut through the air, piercing her skull. It was a sound of pure despair, harrowing and endless. Not from them, but another voice, a child trapped in the dark. "Mommy!" Alex shouted, his feet refusing to move. "Don't look back!" she screamed, dragging them toward the other edge of the circle. As they lunged forward into the remaining glow, the very ground erupted into chaos. The shadows unleashed themselves, twisting like a vengeful tide, grasping at their ankles, clawing to pull them back. "Let go!" Sarah screamed, fighting against the cold tendrils wrapping around her legs, pulling, pleading. But she wouldn't be swallowed. She refused to lose them, yet just as they made a break from the circle, the moment shattered as a figure emerged from the dark, an apparition with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched wide in a sorrowful wail, a haunting reflection of what could become of them. "Sarah!" the voice wailed, clawing at her sanity. "Stay, don't leave." The clearing was behind them, but as they stumbled toward the tree-line, a sense of foreboding remained. Had they escaped? Or merely delayed the inevitable? As the woods closed in, shadows danced around them, whispering secrets that threatened to unearth their inner fears. What waited for them in the depths beyond was as terrifying as what they just fled. And as shadows whispered, a chilling realization dawned: some paths could lead to nowhere. What if the darkness already had a hold on them? What if escape was an illusion? The moment they burst through the tree-line, breathless and wide-eyed, a new fear gripped Sarah. The woods around them transformed. The oppressive shadows seemed to swell, encroaching like dark waves on a fading shore. She glanced back, expecting to see the clearing, the stones, the figures, anything but the forest now held them in a suffocating grasp. "Mommy, what do we do?" Lily's voice trembled, and Alex clung to her side, his small face painted with terror. "Stay close," Sarah commanded, her heart racing as she scanned the forest. Every rustle of leaves, every distant crack of twigs sent adrenaline surging through her veins. Suddenly, another chilling cry echoed through the trees, an uncanny mimicry of a child's laughter blended with a cry for help. A voice tinged with sorrow, like the one they had heard before. "Do you hear that?" Alex asked, eyes wide. "Yes," Sarah replied, gritting her teeth against the rising panic. "But we can't stop." She pushed forward, forcing her legs to carry them deeper into the trees. The growl from before had quieted, but its absence only amplified the eerie stillness of the woods around them. Then, from behind a gnarled oak, a figure lurched into view, shrouded in shadows but unmistakably human-shaped, swathed in tattered clothes, its face obscured, an unsettling familiarity lurking beneath its guise. "Raven." "Sarah." It called, an agonized ache in its voice. "Come back. You don't understand. Move." She screamed, desperately pulling on the kids, urging them onward. But the shadows around them twisted, swelling, shifting like dark smoke, curling around their ankles, whispering incoherent threats. Just then, Lily stumbled, falling onto the damp earth. "I can't, Mommy. Help me. Get up. Get up." Sarah pulled her daughter to her feet, casting another glance back. The figure moved closer, its gait staggered, like it was struggling against unseen weights. "You have to listen," Raven pleaded, desperation laced in every word. "It will take you. You don't belong out here. You don't want to know what's coming." "Shut up," Alex shouted, fear giving him an unnatural burst of confidence. "We want to get away from you. Listen to the boy." Raven yelled back, panic bleeding through its tone. "This place isn't what it seems. Don't be fooled." A whisper, rising from the depths of the shadows, brushed against Sarah's ears. "Join us, you can find peace, be part of the light, stop it," Sarah cried, clutching her head. They were at the edge of a dense thicket, the underbrush thick and wild, but it loomed larger than just a wall of plant life. "Mommy." Lily reached for her with trembling hands. Without warning, Raven lunged, a desperate grasp for Sarah's arm. "You must understand, the forest protects its own." But before it could finish, shadows erupted from the thicket, swirling, morphing into grotesque shapes. A cacophony of howls filled the air, merging with the cries of lost souls. "Run!" Sarah yanked her children, darting into the thicket, branches clawing at their clothes. They squeezed through, the darkness behind them swirling in maddening contortions, and for a moment, they slipped into a twisted sanctuary. But the safety was fleeting. The whispering shadows trailed behind, their voices growing more insistent. "Stay with us, become one with the forest, find peace, don't listen," Sarah shouted. The thicket opened, and they burst out into another section of the woods, a stark contrast from the previous clarity. The trees stood unnaturally still, twisted and gnarled, their bark blackened as if charred. A thick fog settled low to the ground, coiling around their ankles. Fear electrified the air. "Where do we go?" Alex gasped, glancing around wildly. "We've gotta keep moving. Just keep running," Sarah urged, though doubt gnawed at her resolve. As they sprinted forward, a low growl began to surface again, creeping steadily closer, filling the dense mist with an oppressive weight. It rumbled beneath the ground, vibrating through her bones, echoing her own terror. They staggered on, but shadows pulsed, closing in like a noose. Sarah felt the terrible presence behind them again, as if the darkness yearned to ensnare them once more, its grasp growing stronger with each heartbeat. Then, through the fog, she spotted a figure standing motionless. Another woman, pale and gaunt, her face etched with despair. "Help me," she whispered, eyes hollow, as shadows danced around her like a shroud. "Do not look," Sarah screamed. The temptation to pause was overwhelming, the pull of the woman too strong. Just as Sarah grabbed hold of her children and turned to flee, the shadows flared vividly, erupting into an angry roar. The woman's form twisted, her mouth stretching impossibly wide, as if about to scream. In that split second, Sarah realized a horrifying truth stabbed through her heart. What if this forest was not just hunting them but also feasting on their fear? What awaited them in the depths of these haunted woods? The growls grew louder. "Keep moving," Sarah repeated, but dread sank its teeth into her, churning an ice-cold grip in her gut. How long before the trees consumed them? And was Raven right? Were they already lost? A terrible question loomed above them as the mist thickened. What if protection here meant surrendering to the shadows? What if the darkness was family? The shadows slithered closer, whispering promises of safety that felt nothing like reassurance. Sarah's heart raced as they pressed on, each footfall echoing against the hollow silence around them. The cold tendrils of fog wrapped tighter around their legs, almost as if grasping for warmth, for life. "Mommy, what if we don't get out?" Lily's trembling voice cut through the din of fear. "Don't think like that," Sarah snapped, forcing the tremor from her own voice. "We will get out. I won't let anything happen to you." But the more she tried to convince herself, the less certain she felt. The growls intensified, reverberating through the ground. With each pulse of noise, the very air thickened as if the forest itself was alive, breathing down their necks. Every twisted tree loomed larger, their bark almost pulsating, twisting as if hungry for the warmth of human flesh. "Why is it so quiet now?" Alex whispered, his small hand gripping hers tight, nails digging in as terror clouded his gaze. It's watching," Sarah managed to say, a tremor running through her. The sense of being observed ignited a primal fear, an instinct to flee. "Mommy!" Lily cried again, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf in a fierce wind. "Just ahead. There." Sarah pointed through the murky haze. An opening. A break in the trees. The prospect of escape fueled her urgency, pushing her faster. They raced toward it, limbs flailing, weaving through the thicket. But as they neared the clearing, the whispers grew louder, drowning out the growls, enveloping them. Stay with us." Sarah's breath stuttered, a bone-deep chill slithering up her spine. It felt as if the very trees were beckoning her, inviting her to fall into their embrace. She shook her head violently, trying to chase away the insidious thoughts. "No. We need to get out." But the mist thickened, brightening in hue, transforming the air into something elusive. She could hardly see, her vision a blur of shifting shapes. Then, echoes of laughter, childlike, innocent, dripped through the shadows, twisting into something dark and sinister. "Did you hear that?" Alex asked, eyes darting around. "Just keep moving." And then they were through. The clearing opened before them, a stark contrast to the engulfing darkness behind. The sunlight broke through the treetops in slivers, illuminating the ground, revealing twisted roots that seemed to reach out, clawing at the earth. It felt wrong, like stepping into a trap laden with sunlight but suffocated by shadows. "Look!" Lily pointed, eyes wide in fear. A twisted pile of stones hovered at the center, ancient, gnarled, each stone ringing with age. The scent of moss and decay mingled in the air, invading their senses. Sarah stepped closer, compelled despite the wave of nausea that rose from the pit of her stomach. The moment they lingered, the laughter returned, louder now, almost mocking. "Join us," it seemed to hiss, wrapping around her like a tender caress that twisted into a vice grip. "No! No!" Sarah shouted, shaking her head, pulling her children back. The shadows pulsed around them, threatening to swallow them whole. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the far side of the clearing, a tall man, straight-backed, eyes shining with an otherworldly light, dressed in draping rags that seemed to flow around him like water. "Help me," he intoned, voice fragile yet commanding. "Don't listen," Sarah shouted, drawing the kids close. This wasn't right. The man's gaze bore into her, a haunting promise, and she felt the lure of its power pulling her in. You must let go. Join me. The growls returned, swirling around her like a tempest of despair. The dark shadows surged forward, whipping through the clearing in a frenetic dance, expanding like a storm. Run! Sarah urged, her voice breaking as she yanked her kids and turned back toward the engulfing mist. But the shadows didn't take kindly to defiance. They moved like a tide, a surge of nothingness, cascading into the clearing, eager to claim them. Only a few steps in, time fractured. Everything slowed, desire intertwined with disbelief. Was that Raven's voice echoing again? You're too late. It already knows you. They stumbled back, realization hitting with all its terrifying might. The forest wasn't merely a setting, it was alive, watching, and waiting. Every instinct screamed escape, but it became clear, the more they ran, the closer the darkness became. What if the real terror wasn't escaping the forest but being drawn deeper into its sinister heart? As fear gripped her anew, a horrifying thought shook Sarah to her core. What if they had already stepped into its dark embrace? Keep going, she cried, leading her children into the dark, dim branches emerging behind them. But somewhere in the haunting fog, lilting whispers rose, "You belong to us now," and with that lingering caress in their hearts, Sarah wondered if they would ever escape the grasp of the shadows closing in. What did the darkness want? Fear clenched tighter around her throat as the growls swirled and echoed behind, a grave reminder that every choice, every misstep could lead to the final maw of the forest. What awaited them if they couldn't break free from this hell? Time blurred, but one question sang in tune with their heartbeats: was the forest ever really going to let them go? The shadows breathed like a living thing, hungry and relentless. Sarah pushed forward, pulling her children with her through the encroaching darkness. The sunlight behind them flickered like a forgotten memory, nearly lost to the abyss that awaited. Why can't we just go home? Alex whimpered, his small voice cracking. We will, Sarah insisted, but doubt gnawed at her heart. Every step felt heavier, as if the forest itself was trying to weigh them down, pulling them into its suffocating depths. The laughter echoed again, piercing the heavy fog with cruel mockery that bounced off the trees. Stay, stay, it hissed, a haunting melody that intertwined with the sharp growls. It was as if the forest was offering a twisted comfort, a place where they could belong forever. Mommy! Lily cried, her voice a desperate plea that filled the air with more dread. Just keep moving. Don't look back. Sarah commanded, forcing her feet to move faster even as her own resolve crumbled beneath the weight of the despair. Branches snapped beneath their hurried steps. The path twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the oppressive mist. It felt less like a journey and more like an unending spiral into madness. Everything scrambled around her, shapes morphing and blurring, as if reality was distorting right before their eyes. Then she saw a glimpse of something shifting at the edge of her vision. The tall figure lurked between the trees once more, his eyes glowing with that unnatural light. Help me, he crooned softly, pulling at her mind like a puppet master. Get away from him, she shouted, panic clawing at her throat. But as she pressed on, the shadows danced closer, wrapping around her kids like tendrils of smoke. What do you want? Sarah screamed into the blackness. Join us, the laughter reverberated in her ears, filling her head with a sickening sweetness that made her skin prickle. The sound of rustling leaves played like a sadistic lullaby, trying to lull them into some dark justice. Her feet stumbled over gnarled roots that reached out like greedy hands. She barely regained her balance, yanking the kids along as they pressed through the shifting gloom. They needed to get out, they had to get out. Mommy, I don't want to, I want to go home. Lily's voice broke Sarah's heart into splinters. In that moment, the weight of the forest sank deeper into her bones, threatening to shatter her resolve entirely. We're almost there, Sarah promised, though she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep it together. With each passing second, her vision dimmed, the shadows thickening like a suffocating wave. But just then, the space around them shifted again. The forest let out a horrendous growl, deep, booming, a sound that rattled the very ground beneath their feet, and then, everything changed. In the heart of the shadows, a sudden clearing appeared ahead, glimmering faintly but promising ominously, a siren-esque call wrapped in illusion. "No!" Sarah shouted, taking a step back just as the shadows surged toward them. This was a trap. The figure waited in the distance, his voice rising above the chaos, more insistent now. "Join me, let me show you the truth." As the whispers hung thick in the air, the children clung to Sarah. Fear pounded in her chest, darkness swirling closer around them, almost tangible, a suffocating fog of dread. "Mom? What if we can't escape?" Alex's voice trembled, bringing goosebumps to Sarah's skin. This wasn't just about escape anymore. How far would they need to run to shake off the relentless grip of the shadows? But as they stepped into the glimmering light, the shadows lunged, ready to swallow them whole. And in that moment, a chilling realization hit her. What if the forest wasn't trying to let them go at all? "Stay with us," the whispers morphed into a chilling chant, surging through the silence, claiming them in a way that sent a shock through her core. As the clearing seethed with shadows and illuminated with haunting light, Sarah felt the darkness close in. What grim fate lay within the heart of this sinister place? Was the truth worse than she dared to imagine? The shadows erupted like living tendrils, clawing at the air in a frenzy. Sarah's heart raced as she turned back, seeing the dark mass swell behind them, an unholy storm brewing in the void. The moment the light touched their skin, it felt electric and searing, like 1,000 tiny knives digging into their flesh. "Mommy!" Lily screamed, her voice skinny with terror. "Stay close!" Sarah shouted, grabbing their hands tightly, their warmth so fragile against the growing cold. They pressed forward, toward the shimmer that beckoned with false hope. She could feel the heaviness of fear amplifying all around them. The moment stretched out, time bending like the despaired branches overhead, but as they reached the edge of the clearing, the enticing glow dazzled brightly, revealing grotesque shapes. The laughter twisted into a chorus, the faces of unfortunate souls trapped in the woods, forever longing to escape. They were pale, drawn, and staring with maddened eyes. They reached for Sarah and her children, hands grasping like trembling, skeletal leaves. "Help us," they pleaded, voices warped and desperate. "No!" Sarah recoiled, dragging her children away from the clearing's edge. The shadows followed, relentless, their whispers turning feral, an unending chant enveloping her senses. "Join us forever with us, Mom." "What is happening?" Alex cried, pressing against her leg, his small body shaking. "Just keep running." Sarah gritted her teeth, summoning everything she had left. The tears streamed down her face, mingling with the fear gripping her like a vice. Just beyond the clearing, the trees shifted. A massive gnarled trunk loomed overhead. It was splitting open like a mouth, hungry and ready to devour. The laughter rose, mingling with the desperate cries of those trapped as the wind howled through the branches. It was as if the forest itself was a sentinel of dark desires, watching, waiting. "Help find me," the tall figure whispered again, his haunting form emerging at the edge of the glow but never stepping into the light. The glow flickered, teetering on the edge of darkness. The figure's eyes sparkled, taunting and terrifying all at once. "You're almost there, don't listen." Sarah shouted, gripping her children's hands tighter, her knuckles white. She pulled them forward, fighting the invisible hands clawing at their heels. Just as they broke through the edge of the clearing, the shadows surged forward, a rushing tide of malevolence. Something lurched in the darkness, a great beast unseen. It swirled around their ankles, feeling like an ice-cold grip threatening to pull them under. "Mom! I can't." Alex's voice cracked, his legs faltering under the weight of unseen hands tugging at him. "Stay with me." Sarah cried out, her voice rising above the chaos, fear and determination blending into a singular roar. "Hold on tight." But the darkness surged with newfound ferocity, the whispers spiraling into a piercing cacophony. They were nearly at the tree line, sprinting towards whatever lay beyond. "Let go!" Lily shrieked, her little hand slipping from Sarah's grasps, drawn into the magnetic pull of the shadows. "No!" Overwhelmed by a cold dread, Sarah lunged, grabbing her daughter just as the shadows clawed at her legs. The forest howled in fury, the trees bending as if to reshape the world around them. With a final desperate heave, Sarah launched herself and the children into the woods, the cacophony crashing behind them. Together they fell, panting, looking back as the light flickered ominously. But it was what awaited them in the dark that rocked her to her core, a figure emerging from the shadows, face shrouded in malice, whispering with a voice that chilled the very marrow in her bones. Welcome home. Was the truth of this forest bound with sinister intent? Would they ever make it out alive, or had they already surrendered to the fate entwined with the madness? They tumbled into the dense underbrush, branches clawing at their clothes, snagging their skin, pulling them into the depths of the forest. Heart racing, Sarah felt every sound pulsing in her ears, the rustling leaves, the snapping twigs, the low growls that vibrated through the ground beneath them. Each step sent jolts of dread through her. Where were they? Panting heavily, they staggered to their feet. Moonlight barely penetrated the canopy, casting a sickly glow on the ground littered with damp leaves and decomposing matter. Sarah flinched at the silence that followed their frantic flight. The shadows felt alive, whispering secrets in the dark as if mocking their escape. "Mom?" Alex tugged at her sleeve, eyes wide and searchlight bright. His fear poured into her like a siphon, feeding the already growing anxiety coiling in her stomach. "Shoo." Sarah pressed a finger against her lips, peering into the dark. "We need to keep moving." But the forest had changed. The once familiar paths were lost, twisted into a labyrinth of ancient trees that loomed over them like watchful sentinels. The air felt heavier now, thick with a sense of dread that clawed at her throat. Then, as if summoned, the chilling sound of laughter echoed through the trees, a sound echoing too close for comfort. Alex's hand slipped from hers, and Sarah turned just in time to see him shudder as something flickered through the shadows. "Did you see that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "Yes. But we can't." Before she could finish, Lily gasped, her face a mask of horror. There's something behind you." Sarah didn't need to look to feel it, the oppressive weight of darkness pressing against her back, whispering her name in a voice that twisted like a knife in her gut. She turned anyway. Standing there was a tall figure, its body elongated and grotesque, the skin taut against bones that jutted out at impossible angles. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, as if illuminated from within, casting an eerie hue that morphed the surrounding darkness. The laughter echoed again, more pronounced, drowning out any rational thought. "Join us," it whispered, lips curling with a twisted grin. "You can be free. Run!" Sarah screamed, grabbing both kids and pulling them forward. Their feet stumbled over roots and rocks, every instinct screaming that they were being hunted, that the shadows were somehow reaching for them with unseen hands. Alex slipped on a slick patch of mud, falling to his knees. "Mommy. I can't." "No. Get up." Sarah shrieked, but the forest roared in response, taunting her helplessness. The laughter echoed again, that sickly sweet sound wrapping around them like a cocoon. The shadows surged forward, undulating toward them as if weaving a net around the terrified trio. Sarah's heart pounded, each beat a reminder that they were not alone. The woods had awakened all the stories she heard as a child, suddenly felt real and dangerously close. "Mommy. It's coming!" Lily screamed, her voice high and terrified, cutting through the madness. Sarah didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. She pushed onward, her breath coming in ragged gasps, the trees tightening around them, branches swiping at their faces, pulling them in. Desperation fueled their sprint, collided against the whispers and laughter echoing from every corner. Suddenly, a pathway split before them, one leading deeper into the forest, the other teetering toward a thick, black underbrush. "Which way?" Alex cried, his face pale as he glanced between the two routes, panic swelling. "Follow me!" Sarah yelled, the urgency driving her to choose the overgrown path, where shadows danced provocatively, teasing her senses, but as they plunged forward, each step fell into a rhythm of dread. Flickers of light ghosted past, fading into nothingness. Was it hope? Or merely another trick of the forest? Just then, a low growl resonated behind them. Sarah spun around, her heart soaring into her throat. The figure stood again, closer, its smile widening into a grotesque sneer that promised despair. "Join us, it's easier than you think." Her chest tightened. They weren't just fleeing, they were being hunted. Panic surged, and she felt the weight of hopelessness creeping back, earlier fears resurfacing. Would they succumb to the darkness, or could they find a way to break free? The breath of night wrapped around Sarah's throat, chilling and suffocating. "Go!" she commanded fiercely, clutching her children's hands, plunging into the darkness of the unknown once more. But the forest was whispering. What secrets did it hide? Why did it crave them? What price would they pay to survive? And as their footsteps echoed into the oppressive shadows, the wind carried one final, bone-chilling laughter. The darkness churned around them, a living entity that twisted and writhed, waiting for them to falter. Sarah felt her heart pounding violently in her chest, a frightened rabbit caught in the hunter's snare. Every fleeting moment stacked against them, the shadows snaking closer, their whispers beckoning like sirens promising safety in exchange for surrender. "Mommy, I don't want to play anymore," Alex whimpered, the edge of panic lacing his voice. "Neither do I, but we have to be strong," she urged, forcing words through trembling lips. The trees loomed around them, thick and oppressive, their twisted branches clawing as if trying to snag them on the way to a glory they didn't want. Panic surged through Sarah. The forest was alive with deceit, cocooning them with the weight of its ancient malice. A growl echoed again from the shadows, rumbling deep in her gut, a reminder they were still being hunted. Just ahead, a flicker of light caught her eye, a glowing orb that seemed to pulse, inviting them towards safety. Hope sparked internally, but doubt lingered. "Keep moving," she shouted, hatred swelling against the darkness. As the glow beckoned, she noticed the way it twisted the shadows around them, creating monstrous forms that danced through the trees, reaching for her family. Something primal stirred within, an instinct warning her against the light that promised salvation. It could be a trap, Sarah thought, but fear thrummed louder than reason. "Mommy!" Lily's plea drew her back to the urgency, pulling her from the pit of despair. With a fierce determination, Sarah turned and broke into a sprint, avoiding the shadows that lunged hungrily. She didn't know where the path would lead, but forward was the only choice left. The light flickered, illuminating a clearing stained by an eerie glow, where the stones lay jagged like teeth ready to bite. The air, thick and cold, smothered them closer to the ground, a raw reminder of their battle against the forest's relentless hunger. Whispers clawed at the back of Sarah's mind, a tempting chorus promising endless peace, swaying her thoughts. "Don't listen. Stay together," she shouted over the chaos, pulling her children closer. As they entered the clearing, the shift in energy was palpable. The shadows roared behind them, engulfing them in an unyielding grasp. Sarah took a moment, breathing heavily, but knew they couldn't linger near the stones. The shadows would feast if they dawdled. "Mommy, what are those?" Alex asked, horrified, watching the shadows swirl around the outline of the stones, merging into frenzies of hungry shapes. "Just keep running," she urged again, clutching onto their hands. They must escape. Life beyond the woods welcomed them, shimmering with fading daylight just out of reach. Suddenly, figures emerged from the depths, familiar yet wrong, a childhood friend long lost, a face from the past coated in sorrow. "Help! Save us," it murmured, pain etched in its cursed eyes. Without hesitation, Sarah steered her children away, a frenzied energy coursing through her as the ground quivered beneath them. The figures twisted in desperation, reaching out to say something she could hardly bear to hear. Join us forever, they echoed, feeble remnants of their own forgotten aspirations. No! Sarah screamed, the words a desperate shout against the dark tide, and then, without warning, the growl rippled through the shadows again, echoing like thunder, that primal sound of dominance that boiled beneath them. Sarah pushed forward, heart pounding, feet pounding. She broke into a sprint, dragging her children with her, the world slipping into a furious blur. They reached the treeline, where the darkness felt almost insatiable. The echoing mockery of the forest pulsed against them, overwhelming the last bit of will they had left. But as the light behind them dimmed further, something deep within ignited, causing Sarah to glance back. A shimmering path had appeared, an escape route bathed in golden rays. With a primal roar that surged from exhaustion and fear, she propelled herself and her children towards that flicker of hope. In a final surge, they burst from the shadowy vines encroaching around them, collapsing into a meadow bathed in evening light. The wind swept fiercely towards them, carrying with it a sigh of relief. Is it over? Alex panted, chest heaving. I think so, Sarah whispered, the weight of her shoulders slumping in sheer relief. But the shadows behind them growled once more, a reminder that the forest still hungered. One last tremble rippled through the air as the night slowly began to settle. Though the treeline loomed ominously just beyond, the promise of safety now lay forever etched in her heart. The woods had whispered their secrets, a haunting reminder of both terror and survival. Let us go home, she said softly, the light of possibility glimmering brightly ahead. And together, they stepped away from the darkness, hearts still beating against the pain of all they endured. They were not just survivors, they were fighters, reclaiming the light from shadows that yearned to consume. They were free now, as the sun fell low on the horizon, casting the last rays of light across the field. Sarah held her children tightly, their laughter breaking through the remaining weight of fear. And that was how they left the cursed woods behind, stepping towards a future reset by the sheer force of their love. But don't forget, the world is full of stories waiting to be told. You need to subscribe now to catch the next chilling adventure before it's too late. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let others find our tales. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think it all means? Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support.